This afternoon, Michigan became the 21st state to implement a red flag law, which allows a judge to decide if guns should be taken away from people who are deemed to be a threat to themselves or to others. It'll go into effect next spring.
Advocates say red flag laws will reduce gun violence, but opponents say red flag laws do not work and they infringe on Second Amendment rights.
Joining us now to discuss is Washtenaw County Prosecutor Savit. Ellie, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So there is endless debate about what a red flag law means, and there will continue to be debate. But could you explain to us, how is Michigan's red flag law now defined?
Yeah, sure. So effectively what the red flag law does is it allows a court to order the temporary surrender of firearms if the court deems a person to pose a threat to themselves or others. I say temporary because under the law, firearms can be confiscated for a person for up to 1 year. It can be renewed if the person continues to pose a threat, but there has to be a court process. This can be initiated by family members, by law enforcement, by healthcare professionals, former spouses, dating partners, roommates, and the like. But there is due process. There is a process that the court has to go through in order to determine whether somebody does indeed pose a threat. And the idea is to prevent tragedies before they even occur.
And is that a year minimum?
It's a year flat in the law, yeah. And now what I will say is that an individual who has been ordered to surrender their firearms, they can, under the law, come in and try to demonstrate during that year-long period that they no longer pose a threat. But the presumption is 1 year.
And the judge has, what, 24 hours to decide, so it seems like it's a quick turnaround if somebody feels as if a loved one or someone they know is a threat and a danger that possesses a firearm. So tell us what happens in front of the judge.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things can happen. One is if there is clear and convincing evidence that somebody does pose a threat to themselves or others, the court can issue what's called an ex parte order, which means that they issue an order pending the hearing. And then within a couple days after that, there will be a hearing at which evidence is presented as to whether somebody poses a threat to themselves or others. And the reason for this quick turnaround is because the whole point of a red flag law is if somebody is going through a mental health crisis, right? If somebody is threatening to harm themselves or others, time is really of the essence. And, you know, frankly, the wheels of justice often move very slowly. But in situations like these, you do want to move quickly. And that's exactly what the law provides for.
Now, there are a lot of people that are worried that this could be abused, that somebody could say, you know, if I want to get back at Jeff or someone, I'm going to say Jeff's a danger and they're going to take away his guns, even if I don't really have a reason to say that. So to your knowledge, how will that be avoided?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple things. One is, of course, the court is a neutral arbiter, right? So anybody can file something, but that's true throughout the legal system, right? Somebody can always file a frivolous lawsuit against you, file a false police report. But the other thing is that there are criminal penalties for making false reports, including in this law. And so, you know, if a person is doing this maliciously, right, abusing the process, there can be consequences for them. But what I will say is, like, look, this is a potential issue that is present throughout our legal system, and that's why we have due process. That's why we have neutral arbiters in the judges, and nothing happens until the court actually makes a determination based on the evidence that is before them.
What I think could be confusing for people is there are sheriffs out there within the state of Michigan that are saying that they are not going to enforce this. How is that possible if Whitmer signed it into law?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, law enforcement generally always does have discretion about what they're enforcing and what they're not enforcing, right? If you've ever gotten a warning after being pulled over on the side of the highway, you're familiar with discretion. Now, what I do see as different here is if there's a court order, right, to have a person surrender their firearms, then that puts that in a little bit of a different camp. But certainly, you know, law enforcement officers are allowed to file a petition under the red flag laws. Nobody can force them to do it. It's in the
But if it's a
exercise
law,
of discretion.
I understand. If it's a law, it's a law, right?
Sure, but nobody can force a sheriff's deputy or a police officer to go into court and say affirmatively, I wish to have these guns taken away. So if that's what they're referring to, it's true, it's part of their discretion. The thing about the red flag law is there are many more people other than law enforcement who can go into court and seek that order, including, like I said, family members, guardians, people that share a residence. So that option is available as well, even if the local law enforcement doesn't want to do it.
Now, they do get a certain amount of discretion, all law enforcement officers do, as to what or how they enforce. So if you're in one of these counties that's declared itself a Second Amendment sanctuary, if you have that court order and the sheriff's office, the deputies are saying we're not going to enforce it, what happens there? What would you say to the person who may be filing for that order?
Well, you know, I know that the Attorney General said today at the bill signing that if that happens, you know, she will work to find a law enforcement agency that does have jurisdiction that is willing to enforce this order. And certainly, I hope that's what happens because, you know, when you're dealing with this type of situation, you've got a court order that indicates that somebody is a danger to themselves or others, and that should be enforced. So we'll see how it plays out on the ground. Fortunately, at least in Washtenaw County, I'm not aware of any of our law enforcement partners that have taken that stance, but hopefully we'll be able to find law enforcement personnel that will enforce it when the order is signed.
Well, thank you so much tonight for joining us. Washtenaw County Prosecutor Ellie Savit joining us. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.